afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Lucidworks Streams. I'm your host, Michael Hun, professional services consultant here at Lucidworks, and we have Cordless.
It says we're live.
Are we live?
It says we're live.
Okay.
It says a question mark on the stream, but it says we're live. Maybe. I don't know. YouTube is always. Yeah. So hey, what's up, YouTube? I'm Cordless. And here with Michael today. That was a great intro.
Oh, thanks.
I guess I'm a search evangelist, whatever. We're going to be streaming weekly, so if you...
it's funny that you're an evangelist, by the way, based on that.
Yeah, exactly, right? A technology evangelist. I always thought it was interesting that you have this idea of an evangelist being this spiritual guide,
right.
But then you have technology evangelists, and I kind of wonder if that's not why they started calling them growth hackers. Because we used to be called tech evangelists, and all of a sudden I look or turn around and there's not any evangelists anymore. There's all growth hackers, right? So,
well, I think if we're going to get into that discussion, I think evangelist has sort of like that connotation of being able to like. I understand something, and I'm trying to promote that. I mean,
yeah.
The apostles were evangelists.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
that's sort of. I guess that's where that kind of comes from. Spreading the word about something that's
right. That's right.
In this holiday season that we're about to encroach on.
Well, not to get ahead of ourselves in the episode or anything, but we're going to start Fusion today,
right,
on Google again, which is what we've been doing in all the episodes. But I'm going to go a little bit more detail today. I made a video for the office today for Lucidworks, and sent it out on Slack on how to start Fusion, which is our product.
Right.
Which we have this banner at the top of our, at the top of our intro screen, right, which says download Fusion. We need to upgrade. It's so low budget, right? We need to upgrade. I think it's getting ready to upgrade to 4.
Well, 4 won't be coming out to some time. Not like years, but
like next year.
Yeah.
Next year sometime. But
that's a good
But it actually says now available for download on our stream, so we don't have it. It should have our names up there or something, or whatever. But I mean, like I look at it as. If you've never installed a piece of software or run it and never used it,
right.
I installed a space simulator the other day and was trying to figure out all the controls, and I had to watch several YouTube videos.
Yeah.
So it's very irrational at first when you're using a piece of software. It's very irrational, but then there's somebody who's rationalized it. And I look at that as a technology evangelist job. Is to rationalize the irrational. Right? And an evangelist, if you were looking at a spiritual evangelist, well, everything spiritual is irrational. None of it makes very much sense because it's not like there's gods floating around, interacting with people.
It's a very sort of
It's an internal spiritual thing, right? And then you have to have an evangelist sort of translate for you.
That.
Yeah, so that's what a technology evangelist does. So, well, let's get into it. We're going to do a little quick hacker news rant.
Yeah.
So I got your.
And how appropriate. The first one is sex toy company admits record users remote sessions. Sit a minor above.
Wait.
No,
what?
That's not what we're actually we're going to talk about.
I gotta see this. Sex toy company admits recording users' remote sessions, calling it a minor bug. So I don't know if it's on Facebook, but on Hacker News, but evidently. Is this true? Is Facebook asking people to upload porn so that they can?
Really?
Have you heard of this revenge porn? Like partners will take pictures and porn pictures, and then then you like break up. And then send it out, and so then Facebook is saying, well, you can upload your pictures to
I can
to
Facebook.
That, yeah. I can't.
Joke.
But I suppose that isn't this an indication of like sort of it's sort of technology breaking down society's norms, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, that's happening a lot lately.
Right.
Especially look at things like Twitter and politics.
What was the norm in politics before? Us not knowing?
Us not knowing every thought that pops into a person's head at any given time, unfiltered.
And now that's something that's a normal for us,
That's
right?
something that reminds me of that movie where the guy was born on a planet where no one could lie. So, and it was just him sort of, it was with the guy from the 40-year-old virgin. So
Yep.
he's born on a planet where no one could lie, but he was the only person that could lie. And then he started to construct religion, and because no one could lie, they thought, he said, oh, I saw God,
Right.
or I saw a God, or I saw
Right.
this. And because everyone, it's not gullible, no one can lie, so they all thought, well, he's not crazy. Are you crazy? No.
Right.
Well, then it must be true. So he just kept building on that construct. Pretty fun. And pretty interesting.
That's interesting that you say that, because I've spent a fair amount of time over the past few years thinking about like trusted infrastructure, like how to build trusted infrastructure. I mean, infrastructure in general, like whenever you log in somewhere, you're using an account or something, like there's some level of trust that the service that you're using knows who you are. Some sort of identity exists. And so, the idea of being...
and that's not me saying that people that involve in religion
right.
are lying. I'm just...
Yeah, no.
It's a movie.
No, I believe that... yes, totally. But it's like, I could lie... I mean, in practice, I can lie about who I am on the internet, for example.
Right.
Right? That's very easy to do. So on Twitter, you can pretend to be somebody.
Right.
Right? Or you can say things that aren't true. And whenever you think about identity, it's like certain cultures allow identity to lie or to question lying, and some cultures don't allow an identity to lie or question lying.
Right.
And I'll give you a direct example of that. So, for example, I worked in Germany for a little while, and Germans are very trust-oriented nowadays. That's just sort of their shtick. And the way that they sort of evaluate trust is that they consider you to be consistent over time. So some sort of consistency, some sort of consistent behavior over time.
Right.
If they haven't known you very long, they don't really trust you very much. It would be a fair assessment.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't say they don't trust you, they would just go, I don't know whether I can trust you or not.
Right.
Right, so there's a subtle difference between the two.
Yeah.
Americans, it seems like the way that we sort of operate is we sort of allow you to raise an irrational question, and then we explore it. We're like, oh great, let's explore being completely irrational. And that seems to run afoul of what the internet, at the same time, what the internet is all about.
Right.
Which is sharing information and connecting people socially. You kind of expect, if you go on Facebook, that you see stuff that's true, but then you don't.
But then you don't.
Right. I deleted my Twitter account.
Right, okay.
This is why I deleted my Twitter account.
Yes. Didn't know what was true or what wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. I mean, I think that that's important that I be able to validate that things are true on there. There's other sites that I go to. I didn't delete my Reddit account. So I know people are not telling the truth on Reddit, right, for example. Right. I go to 4chan. So, definitely people there are not telling the truth. And they're all anonymous. With Reddit, you sort of have pseudo-identity. But with Twitter, I felt like that was supposed to be me. And then I'm interacting with all these people that aren't really who they are, saying things that aren't really true.
Right.
And it felt like it just felt like all of a sudden I realized that Twitter just really wasn't good because of that.
So, when I was a lot younger, like back in the day, like I used to do a lot of chat rooms, and I always came into it like, you definitely have to prove, like, if any situation, if you're gonna tell me something or whatever, you always have to prove like that what you're saying is true. Like,
yeah.
Whatever it was. And I see why you like where when Twitter and Facebook sort of came along, I took them more like chat. When the content seemed to be more like chat room ish to me, where you could post these things, but it doesn't. Is this necessarily true what you're saying? And I think what ended up happening over the years is that you know, you can post whatever you want, and if you're an organization that hires writers, then you can publish whatever you want. You can publish that right on Facebook, and so sort of feeding this sort of disinformation into the system, which, you know, if you don't vet it well enough, then you can take a lie for the truth. And that, that's right. I don't have it. It's a cheap way of getting information out, regardless if it's true or if it's not true. If it's not true, you're spreading rumor. I mean, it's the best way to spread a rumor. I used to tell, like, I have a group of friends, and it's like, oh, if you don't want to keep it a secret, make sure you tell him, and then it'll be like the San Francisco Criers.
Yeah.
You know,
tell the visualizer. Tell the visualizer.
You know what? I'm gonna ask him. I'm gonna ask this person about that because I start building a correlation between.
Yeah, I have a bunch of friends who are big visualizers, and they're capable of generating these truths.
Right.
Internal truths, right? Which then they can share with other people.
Right.
And so then it becomes, well, let's explore this. It almost feels like it's like, just let me try telling you a story, a tall tale, and then let's see if I can get it to stick. And if we can get it to stick, then maybe that's the story that we tell everybody.
That reminds me of someone, but I'm going to keep this non-political.
Non-political? All right. Did we thoroughly? Is that our Hacker News rant?
Actually, the real one I was going to go to was the Equifax CEO to Congress. Not sure we are encrypting. Why? Not sure we are encrypting data. Oh, really?
How can you not be sure you're encrypting data?
Equifax.
Well, one way to be sure that you're not encrypting data is to actually hand out the wrong URL for checking to see if your Equifax account has been compromised or not. Did you see this?
No.
So there was somebody on Hacker News created a site that was very close to the URL that Equifax was handing out.
Right.
And then they put it up. And then Equifax typed it in wrong, and it came up, and it looked like Equifax's site, and so then they sent it out to all their customers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Sent it out to a good number of customers, but it was the wrong site. But then the person came clean, right? It's kind of like what we're talking about. Right. I'm going to tell a little different story, right? I'm going to pretend to be you, Equifax.
Right.
I just feel like Equifax should be shut down.
Yeah, I've found that a lot of the credit card companies that I have, like, they offer like credit score keeping, and a lot of them use Equifax. I'm like, I don't even know if I can trust that number anymore because where it's coming from and like has someone tampered with the data or this, that, and the other. I think they're becoming like more of a liability than anything. And then when you have the CEO of the company saying, I'm not sure if we're encrypting the data. Well, after all that's happened, you're not sure now. Security should probably be the number one thing on your mind right now.
I mean, but should it? I mean, I'm going to question that. Like, at this point, I know for a fact, maybe, that I say that maybe because I went and used the right site.
Right.
I used their right site, and I typed in something like Bob Smith or something like that, and then made up some social security number, I think, last 4 digits, and then it said, no, you weren't, and then I typed in my right stuff, and then it said I was. That it was taken, that my stuff was taken. Was stolen by the hacker.
Okay.
Because they downloaded all of it.
Yeah.
So I feel like the data's already out there. So go for it, right? I mean, like, what is Equifax going to do to make it any worse? There's some hacker made off with all of their data. So I mean, really, they can change the story by saying different things. But I mean, does it really make me more concerned that they didn't encrypt it? Well, duh.
Right.
I mean, they made off with my stuff.
Too little, too late. Okay.
Yeah, it's too little, too late.
But what? That was 150 million. There's 300 million people in the United States. It's still.
Yeah. Maybe there's 300 million people. 330?
330.
I know there's a lot of kids.
Yeah.
So they presumably, even though they have Social Security numbers, they might. I mean, it's really having. I mean, Social Security numbers are not secure.
Right.
Because I actually had a lady, when I was living in Oklahoma, I had a lady make up my Social Security number and use it in Oklahoma. And she used her name. So when they asked her for her Social Security number, she just made up a Social Security number. And I'm not going to share my Social Security number here, but my Social Security number has a lot of one number in it. And in fact, it has that number repeated a couple of times in it.
Right.
So she made up the Social Security number, and then it ended up going on my credit report.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because she wrote a hot check at a Walmart. And I had to go to Walmart and show them that was my Social Security number for them to take it off.
I'm not Jane Doe, clearly.
Yeah, I'm not whoever this other person's name was.
Yeah.
That's not even my name.
Yeah.
And it still went on my credit report. True story. All right, well, I don't know. I think Equifax should just turn everything off. Should just turn it off. Maybe they can, I was thinking maybe they could just turn themselves into a fax company, like old-time faxes. Maybe like,
go back to fax. Like you'll be a fax facilitator.
Fax facilitator. I miss faxes, They're like, hey, you got a fax, man.
I remember calling into, like, if you call into, like, a landline, and they had the modem on, or if they had a fax on, like, sheepy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I will do that before the end of the show, surely. We'll fire that up.
There we go. That was hacker news.
Okay, so I think I gotta look at our. Okay, so
we're gonna start Fusion. I think
we're gonna start Fusion. Remember, if you like the videos that we're providing, make sure you give us a thumbs up.
Yeah, like us on YouTube, our YouTube channel.
I'm gonna actually take it off YouTube there. So okay, so this is Google Cloud's platform. They have a whole bunch of stuff in here that you can use, but basically you can start instances. You can also run containers. What we're looking at here is their UI, which is sort of split between normal web interface and a shell in a browser. So you get this terminal shell in a browser, and the terminal shell actually runs in a container. And we've shown this before, but we have this script that we run, which is called Start Fusion, and this is always in the show notes, so if you're interested in seeing it, go and look in the show notes, and it'll pop up in there. We'll provide a link to the GitHub repo for this. But if you're wanting to check out the repo, it is at https github.com/lucidworksstreams. Because we're going to check it out, and that script is included in that repo. And you will need to put it on your Google console or your Google container that's attached to your console. That's what they fire up. So what happens is when you run this script, it starts a Fusion instance, and once it does start it, you can click on refresh at the top, and in the VM list. And you'll be able to see that it started up, and so we have here a Fusion Server 8v8b, and it's going to have an external IP address 35.202.189.164. And what's kind of cool is the script prints it out whenever it is ready, and then Google's shell allows us to click on these URLs, which I'm going to do now. Now, one thing that I've noted is that I did a little video for as I mentioned earlier, for the office today, and what you have to do is you have to open up this port, and the reason why you have to open up the port is because Google has a firewall that they run for all of your instances, and so one of the things that you got to do is add that port. Do you remember the port off the top of your head? You know what the port number is?
For
Fusion.
8764.
Yeah, 8764. And 8764. And what you have to do is
that's the UI proxy port, but there's
there's other ports that you have to open up, right? Yeah. Well, you don't have to open up other ports; it'll use that internally. But if you were to, do some other stuff with it,
right.
And so once you, if I can get Google to cooperate here, come on, you go to firewall rules, and you're going to create a firewall rule for 8764. And whenever you do that, and I have no idea why it's running so slow here. This is the way it is when you're doing things live, is that you end up creating a firewall rule allowing all of the IPs out there in the world under 0.0.0.0/0 for the aggregate, and then TCP 8764. And you just have to create that, so you create a firewall rule up here, and then type in that port number. And whenever you type in the port number, you have to put TCP in front of it. And so hopefully by now I've talked long enough that maybe the instance is running. It's not yet, but the web server is responding, so which means it'll be up here just shortly. And once that instance comes up, then we'll have a Fusion instance. And what happens behind the scenes is that it's a bash shell script. It downloads the binary from our website, and then goes ahead and provisions an instance. And the instance is an 8-core, 30 gig instance. Whenever you do launch Fusion, it does need a bit of horsepower and RAM. So I hear now that we need at least, like, I think 6 gig of RAM to start up at a minimum.
Yeah.
So if you're running this in a VM on your laptop or whatever, it's not going to work if you launch Fusion in there unless you tweak it properly. So I'll just put a caveat there, is that you need a box with enough horsepower to do it. We recommend starting it in the cloud. It's the easiest thing to do, unless you happen to be running like a cloud at home or something like that, right, with OpenStack. Let's see if this works now. It should be up. Yeah, it's not quite up yet. Getting there. So that's going to start here in just a second. So I think the topic today is visualizing search.
Yes.
We've been talking about visualization a lot. So what do we mean by visualizing search?
There you go.
What does that mean to you? If you were to say visualizing search, how would you visualize your searches or search?
That is a good question. Like what is it? What do we mean by that? I guess based on some of the discussions that we've had outside of here, being able to take a visual object and turn it into some sort of textualized framework. I guess when we talk about how we don't see, like if I ask you, imagine an apple, we always make the joke, I can visualize what you're saying, but I'm not bringing it into my mind's eye.
I have aphantasia.
Right.
I am gifted with aphantasia, so aphantasia is this topic. Yeah. Blessed, gifted, yeah, exactly. So I mean, on topic, I mean, we should be very specific about what we're talking about and why we're talking about it, which is that I've been creeping around for about a year and a half knowing, and I'm 51 now, so it took me until I was about 50 to figure out that I don't actually visualize internally with the mind's eye with visual components. Blake Ross wrote about this topic, and I've talked about it incessantly, so I'll try not to talk about it as much right now. But then I suppose that's sort of like, we're going to talk about the fact that you're the same way.
Right, exactly.
And we're, as far as we know, the only people at the company so far that are that way.
What's wrong?
Word to Michael, or what's wrong with those guys? Can you kind of describe to me, like when I first brought it up with you, I mean, I made the claim people see things in their mind, and then I drug you over to somebody. Christina, I drove you over to Christina, and I said, Christina, please visualize. What did you think when she was relating all that? Did it surprise you?
I guess I was surprised because I guess when we think about sometimes when we think about things, we think about our own personal experience, and it's like, how could you hate chocolate? Like, I love chocolate. Like, how could you hate so like that's an impossible thing. Well, apparently there are people in this world that hate chocolate.
Right.
Apparently there are people in this world that are not software engineers, and that people in this world that also that can visualize something into their visual framework, and
where they see a visual image in their mind.
Like they can see this in their mind.
Right.
And then there's like these other cases where like you can visualize something within your own reality, our reality, but only I can see it. I can visualize an apple sitting on the table, and I can't visualize it. I can describe you what an apple would be like sitting on the table.
Right.
But I don't see the apple. But there's another person that, like Christine, you could say, can you visualize an apple on the table? And boom, there it is, a perfectly red apple that she sees sitting there. And to me it's like, what? Like, you can do that? Like,
yep.
It's like that's like a thing.
Well,
I was very sort of taken back about just sort of. I was taken aback by it. It seems such a weird concept to me, but that's because I don't do that.
Well, one of the things I read said that it was uniquely human, and I thought that was a sort of a. First I called bullshit on that because I'm like, clearly I'm human, right? You're human, right? So okay, so it's not unique. Like, so some humans may not have it, and I swear that I swear my dog visualizes. She'll be looking around and then she'll just be staring at the wall, and I'm like, what are you doing? And then she's like moving her head around, looking at the wall. She has to be seeing something, right? So, and clearly we know animals dream.
Right.
So,
my dog dreams all the time.
Exactly.
She sounds like she's chasing something or something like that. You can tell like she's dreaming. That's
a form of visualizing. Internally, using the mind's eye to see something.
That's the only time I can visualize is when I.
Yeah, as well. Same for me. Same for most aphantasics. So we appear to be about 1 in 50 in the population, which is sort of interesting, maybe 2 to 3%. What I find is interesting is when you get people to describe what they're seeing in their mind, like recalling their family members or maybe visualizing a triangle. I have some friends that can visualize a circle on the wall, both of them at the same time. They don't necessarily agree with exactly what it looks like, but you hear them communicating with each other, and you can tell these people are seeing these things.
Right.
So it's sort of like
mine's green. Oh, mine's purple. Yeah,
exactly. It's sort of that banter that you get the idea that there really is an image existing for that person in that context. But I think humanity is also sort of kind of like, I don't know, maybe like rationalized or explained that everyone sees something different internally. Mm-hmm. So that there happens to be some of us that don't see anything at all seems to be sort of normal in the broad spectrum of things.
Right.
But one of the things which is the reason we're talking about this, is that we started thinking about, well, if we don't visualize, maybe there are other things that don't visualize that could benefit from visualization.
Right.
So that's why I think this topic of visualizing search came from. So now that you have the context of what we're at with this, then what do you think visualizing search would look like? So you're now searching Google.
Right.
And how does it visualize? How is search going to visualize?
Well, I guess, like, if we...
Do you want to pull something up on the computer?
Yeah, I'm going to be very sort of simplistic with it.
Fusion's coming up. Hold on a second.
Okay.
It's spinning. Yeah, there it is. Okay, I'm going to cut over to you now.
Okay, hold on a second. All right, there. You can see my Google screen, right?
Actually, it was on you the entire time. It wasn't on me. So, unfortunately, I just did all of that without transitioning over to. I don't know what to do with that. I mean, you were looking at Michael's screen the entire time, so we screwed up. It happens. It happens. So I do have Fusion up. I'll go through doing that over again here shortly. But
are you still looking at
I'm gonna cut back over to you, and then I have to do this. Then you should be good. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So I was just gonna say, like, for Google, like, we'll just go to the official Google.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when we talk about visualizing search, okay, I'm going to put in Christmas is coming, so I'm going to search for a teddy bear for my nephews and nieces, the young ones. This is what I think about when I think of visualizing search. Like,
yes,
when I click on images or videos, I better be seeing pictures of teddy bears.
Yep.
And different. I specify, like, if I put in purple, I expect to see visualizing purple teddy bears. Sort of getting around that. And if there is a real bear here, it should be way, so, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It should be way at the bottom. Like,
right.
Okay, so we have a brown bear. He's clearly not purple. He could be purplish in some manner, but that's what I think. I don't know what I could tell you, but what's that?
So we have some textual content at the top, and what's sort of interesting is Google has even called out some colors. So for Valentine's Day, it's pink, and I don't know how they did that. Maybe it was just a coincidence that they made it pink, but maybe they know to make Valentine's Day pink. I don't know, but we have a bunch of text there, and so we know now that we have AI, and Google has AI to be able to do that. So when we think about search, so we searched for something and we got back images, but is that really search visualizing?
I think it's taking that. I think for me, they're taking that image and processing that image into some sort of textualized entities. Like, I see. So if we take this guy here.
Yep.
Them being able to say first, what is in this picture? Well, you have curtains and it's sitting on something. We don't know what it is. Maybe they can't tell it's a chair just because you're only capturing a certain part of it. And it's their algorithm isn't that great. But the main part of the picture is what? A teddy bear.
It's a teddy bear, yeah.
Okay, so we got a bear, and maybe there's something attached. Like it has a bow tie.
Right.
It's the color is I type a shade of purple. It may not be able to get like it's a pastel purple or whatever.
Right.
It's still purple.
So I mean, like if I look at it, there's all sorts of things. So I think of the velour, it's soft, bow tie, plaid, a chair because he's sitting in a chair. There's an arm of a chair. There's a seam. What is that called? Where you have a bead around the like a cushion. There's some
Is
term.
it like embroidering or
I forget what that's called.
Or piping?
Piping.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Right. So see, it's like humans are provided with these things.
Right. Like we have a dictionary of things that like.
Right.
We know this is an eye. So when we see other things, like I can look at a teddy bear and because I know what a face, like I have a context of what a face
looks like
is, then I can say, oh, two eyes, this, and this, that's a face. A happy face. It doesn't matter if it's a happy face or if it's a teddy bear's face, if it's Cord's face or if it's my face. We can see a face. We know what a face is. So we can start gathering that sort of information. And I guess for me, when it comes to fusion, how can that be brought into the search capability? So when you start indexing images, you could be like a lot of people want to index images. No surprise, even if it's part of a document, graphs or like some sort of image you embedded into a document. obviously you put that in there for a reason. So is it when it comes to search, when you're breaking down a document, do you just disregard? Okay, well the image, although it has a lot to do with the context of this document, we can't, because we're not processing it. It's no longer part of the metadata.
Right.
But if you can bring that sort of context of that into the document, then what does that provide you about the overall searchability within that document, the context of what that document is about?
So open up. Let's look at that in a direct example. So open up. What's Walgreens? WALGREEN. Yeah. So I was looking at Walgreens today, and maybe let's search for, I don't know, drugs or something like that. I don't know. I was because they have a bunch of drugs there.
Okay.
Like yeah, exactly.
Aspirin? Yeah.
There
it is right there.
You don't need to spell it because it's in the search engine. Yeah. So this is sort of what you're talking about, right? Is we're getting back. I don't know how many results we have. Acetaminophen, we've got
280.
Yeah. So we've got 280 items, but it's all image based. And another thing that pops out to me is price and reviews. And so we have a little bit of a description, but it feels like most of it is pushing the image toward me most.
Yeah.
And this makes sense because it's brands, right?
Right.
And which, even with regular aspirin, you have Walgreens brand of aspirin, but
and what did they put up? What did they put up at the head of the pack? Walgreens brand aspirin.
So you think they boosted that? That would be a.
Want to try something else?
Yeah.
Let's try hand lotion.
Okay. Or hand sanitizer. Yeah, hand soap. Well,
there were maybe.
How about Band-Aids?
Band-Aids.
Yeah.
Oh well, straps and bands. Band-Aid is
bandages maybe. There's the top. Yeah.
Okay.
Walgreens.
That seems more like a.
There it is again, Walgreens. Yeah.
Walgreens. I can think. Let's do hand sanitizer.
Yeah. So hand
Maybe
sanitizer is kind of weird.
Yeah.
Because it would have to be something that's common, right? So if you have like Walgreens has brands, they would.
Yeah, so they have certain things that they have brands. They have. Hold on, I got one. I see this all the time. You're controlling my mouse.
I'm sorry.
I'm like, oh.
I was gonna go set the password.
Face cleanser. Okay. Well, some things they do. Well.
If I were Walgreens, what I would do is go and identify the top brands that I could go get my brand put on a particular product.
Right.
So a lot of times you have products, some products are like soap, for example. I bought some Bon Ami the other day. Have you ever heard of this? Bon Ami? Have you heard of Comet? Like Comet Cleaner? Yeah. So Comet Cleaner, interestingly enough, is made out of quartz. Bon Ami is made out of the leftovers when they mine quartz, which is called feldspar, and it's a much softer thing, so you can actually clean glass with it.
Okay.
And so Bon Ami is like super cheap. They're essentially selling you rocks. So 40% of the Earth's crust is made out of feldspar.
Okay.
Right, that's what the Earth's crust is made out of. So they take feldspar, rocks, dirt, and they toss it in this thing with some baking soda and some soap. And they call it Bon Ami, and it's like dirt cheap. It's like $1.50.
You can use dirt to clean
things, but it's not exciting or sexy or anything like that. It doesn't have, it doesn't kill 99.9% of germs.
Right.
It actually just cleans your pots really well, right? So I feel like that in a search results set, you're really wanting to promote stuff that maybe if you're a company selling things that makes you the most money.
Right. Yeah.
That would be kind of the purpose, right? but also serves your customers' interests. So these no-name brands are these brand name items that are like Walgreens brand.
Right. Usually, yeah. And the thing is, and usually the Walgreens brand, or what I would call a generic brand of a product, it's the same exact thing. It's just the packaging
is different.
Is different.
Yeah. Makes it easy for people to see it whenever they're, trying to figure out what they want for themselves, right?
Right.
So this, to me, like if we're to loop it back around to the context of visualized search, is whenever, batteries are a good example too, right? So now, a lot of people don't know this, but there's only actually a couple of battery manufacturers in the world. And they're not Energizer or Duracell. So Energizer and Duracell are they use somebody else's batteries, so it's a brand just like anything else. Right. And there's literally hundreds of battery brands out there in the world, but most batteries are built in the same factory. So if you buy a AA battery of certain quality, there are different qualities produced. You're going to get that same battery. Right. So when you buy a Panasonic battery and an Energizer battery, they're the same battery. But people don't like that. They want the Energizer brand because they associate it with
quality.
With the bunny rabbit beating on the drum. They've seen it. They know that to them represents that quality of that product.
Right.
And that's the only way they're able to hold it.
So the brand is nothing more than a way to say it's like quality control.
It's quality control for the consumer, that's right. The consumer knows they have used Energizer batteries and they want to continue receiving that level of quality. They're going to keep buying them. Because there are bad batteries in the world. You can buy bad AA batteries, but I'm simplifying greatly, but one set is, one type of bad battery is built in one factory and the good battery is built in another factory, but that's about it. Right, and then it depends on how much you want to spend. So Energizers and Duracells are more, because they're good batteries, but they actually clad them in their own brand.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and Panasonic, interestingly enough, if you buy Panasonic, it's the same quality as Energizer. Yeah, and that especially matters when you're buying those little button batteries and they're like $6.
Right.
So they're actually, the production cost on those are like 25 cents. So people use visual images to back up stuff all the time, to back up the quality of stuff. Right. So if we were thinking about visualizing search, I would propose that this is we're actually experiencing what the search should be doing for us. So number one, search would need to know that I trust Energizer batteries. Now, maybe it does that based on my click history. So I've bought Energizer batteries before, but maybe it's also based on what I know. I know I have Energizer batteries at the house.
Right. Or if a particular set of batteries is on sale.
And it's a better deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I would want to buy it. And that's a pretty good deal. I mean, it's not a great deal. You're paying about, a little less than $1 each for those. You can see the coin batteries are kind of expensive, but if you buy them in bulk, that's pretty good. Like $309 for a bulk set of those batteries. In the store, they're going to be much more, which is interesting. Like if you went into the store, down on Market, you can see
these must be really expensive because they don't even have a price on them.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So what I'd like to do now is show you how computers see images. So if I'm going to cut over to me, and I actually have. Did you close your window?
No, that's still my. You.
Oh, I did that. I'm sorry. Oh, it's my mouse is doing that. I'm sorry. Okay. All right. So and I did explain all of this earlier on. I'm going to for sure transition to my screen this time. So I'm just going to go back over that Fusion start script again real quick.
It still looks like it's on my screen.
It is on for sure.
Yeah,
there's a little bit of delay in that. And so this Fusion start script, and I do apologize, we missed that earlier, but it happens. This is really, all it does is it just runs a G Cloud command, and that ends up starting an instance, and it's got a 50 gigabyte SSD drive, which is pretty important if you're wanting to mess around with the search engine. Search engine needs to be pretty quick when you're wanting to interact with it and it's crawling and stuff like this. And this is about 30 gig of RAM in it. And the way that we do this is we just run a Start Fusion like this, and that's all we really do. And then that starts it up, and again the script's in our repo. But what I wanted to show was this Clarify AI thing. And so I actually wrote this last week. And what this does, it uses a service called Clarify. And let's see if I can get this work. Okay, so yeah, Clarify, it's going to need me to install this. So I'm going to run the pip install for this. And this is going to, I need a sudo. Dude, this is root. And again, I'm doing this all in my container on Google. So this is not local. This is in the container, my account on Google. And while that's doing that, I'm going to search for purple titty. I'm afraid of things that are coming up on the internet sometimes. You know, like some things you're searching for. I think we're pretty safe on purple teddy bear.
Well, you never know.
You never know.
You never know.
Yeah, it might get interesting. So let's take the bear that Michael had earlier. I think this is the one. And we're going to copy the image address so that we have that, and then we're going to go to that and make sure that's the bear. Make sure that it will actually serve it for, okay, there's the purple teddy bear. And then, this is still installing, oh great, it's done. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to edit this file, which is called foo. And I'm going to tell it to, I hope this works. I'm going to tell it to use that teddy bear image. And so what this does, if I just look at it real quick, is we'll make sure that's the right one. So what this does is it uses clarifies. They clarify as a library that they provide for Python. And what it does is, this is my app key, so I'll have to change my app key after this, but that's fine. And it's going to load up a model, which is a general model, and it's going to ask the model what this image is by passing it the URL. And then in theory, if this works, I'm going to get back a list. Yeah, I'm going to get back a list. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to, can I do that pretty print thing? How do I do that in Python? It's Python, and what a PyTool? Python.
Pretty print JSON?
Yeah, pretty print JSON. Pipe it to ImPython tool or something like that. There it is. Python dash mjson. mjson tool. That's right. Yep. Here it is. Yeah, so
print JSON docs.
Yeah, that should work. Well, that didn't work. Actually, I think this is not a JSON file. I think it's just a. Oh, okay. So maybe we'll just pick these out. We'll cherry pick them. Okay, so we got aromatherapy. That's one of the key terms that came back.
Right.
You know why that is? It's because it's purple. You know why that matters? Because purple is associated with lavender. And lavender
is
Yeah, whenever I take my dog to get her haircut, they give her aromatherapy and they put lavender on there. So this is like somehow. So you would have to. So aromatherapy, right?
We have a very spoiled dog.
I'm
like, oh yeah, my dog too.
Handmade. Well, I take my dog over to East Oakland.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's like in the sort of Latino area.
Right.
Yeah, it's right there near like Ghost Ship. You know where the Ghost Ship? You heard about the place that burned down?
Oh yeah.
Totally sketch area, but yeah, I like going over there. It's fun. So we've got handmade toy. I don't know that it's handmade, but it's definitely a toy.
Okay.
Teddy.
So these are all the.
It's got a color.
Yeah.
Cozy. Towel. Therapy. A therapy bear. Yeah. Bath. I'm just sort of having to search for these. There's a plush.
Color.
A flower. A medicine.
Towel.
Yeah, right.
Oh, maybe that's because therapy. It's like
maybe.
Aromatherapy.
Well, like
treatment.
medicine. Yeah. So they have weights here, so they're giving us weights back.
No person. That's true.
Oh, no person. Yeah. Well, yeah, you would say
not a person.
Yeah, there's a teddy, which is interesting. Is 9 percentage point 91%. It's a teddy.
Okay, so the U value is a percentage of accuracy. The U name is what it is. Wait, U name U medicine. Okay.
Now 86% towel. Bath. So clearly these things are coming back from us to us with some of this. So here's what I was thinking about maybe visualizing search would be, is that if somebody searched for this purple teddy bear, then what it would actually do is run it through an AI neural net, get back these responses.
These data points with percentage of accuracy of like what? Yeah.
Yeah, and then use them in some sort of signal.
Yeah.
Right. I would say like go and so maybe a general flow would be I'm going to go to a page. I'm going to type in teddy bear. And then it's going to bring back a bunch of images, and then I'm going to run AI on all of the images to get back the textual representations. And then I'm going to take those, and I'm going to do some sort of, like signal analysis on that, right? Based on what they click on next.
Right.
So if they clicked on the purple teddy bear, then maybe I would include lavender in there, right? But maybe I don't do anything with it, but maybe I boost things that would be close to lavender or something like that, right? Depending. But clearly some of these things are not what was in the page itself. So lavender's not in the page, there's not cozy's not in the page. But then all of a sudden now, because we ran some sort of analysis on the image, we know now that this thing is cozy.
Well, that goes back to last week's discussion when we were talking about the hacker news with regard to being able to develop an AI to figure out if someone is a criminal or not. And it's what your training data, based on your training data set, like who developed it, who, like how skewed or how biased it is. Like obviously someone had to sit there and like go through, someone had to train some sort of, like you're training a data set, like if you see purple, like purple has connotations to lavender. Lavender has connotations to like spas and aromatherapy and that sort of thing, coziness and the smell, because smell and spas and all that kind of go in together. I guess if you put in teddy bear shit, then you would get. I love your facial.
Let's do it. No, we're not. We won't do that here.
I think that's where the internet will prove us to be a dark
place.
We wouldn't be seeing anything like that. I can tell you that much right now.
Let's see if we can find a teddy bear. This teddy bear has a brown bow. He looks sort of. I would imagine they all are cranked out of the same factory. Yeah, that looks like the exact same bow, right?
Yeah.
So let's take the resulting image. Okay, so there's a red teddy bear, and then let's edit our script.
Red definitely has connotations to Valentine's and love.
So you're gonna
I'm actually surprised that we see something.
You're gonna you're gonna expect.
Yeah.
You're gonna expect some different.
Some different.
From the AI, right? All right. So let's see what happens here. All right. Well, you see? Here's a good one. You see this one?
I'm waiting for the screen to catch up. Okay. Let's see.
Wool is one of them.
Okay.
I've highlighted the scandalous one. Child, downy, decoration, felt up, yeah. Character, celebration. I mean, where does that come from? Felt up.
I don't. Yeah. Look. Why would that?
Here's one. Winter.
Where does red? Oh well, red has to do with it's a Christmas color, I guess.
Yeah.
Red and green.
Christmas. Yeah, there's Christmas right before it, in fact. Yeah, 99, right? Christmas. That's interesting. So that's a Christmas bear, as opposed to maybe a Valentine's bear, right?
I would have thought it would have been more Valentine. But
I would have too. So there's Teddy again.
Christmas is,
99.75% Teddy. What was Teddy before?
Gift. Did we see Gift in the other one? I don't remember seeing Gift.
I don't remember. Let's see here if I can.
Toy. I do remember seeing Toy.
I can't. I don't think I can search. That's not going to work in that. We need a little bit better formatting. But I think Toy was in the other one. There's that fur, cap. So some other stuff is coming in here. So clearly, I mean, here, doll.
Decoration.
Yeah, downy. I mean, clearly, this is not, for example, we don't have aromatherapy, right? So, I mean, is it possible that if I were to visualize a teddy bear, if I were capable of visualizing a teddy bear, I wouldn't really get all of that stuff? I might, if I associated it with it, but maybe I wouldn't. So, is it possible that what we do is actually, maybe do the search with some of these values in here? So, if we were to search for maybe winter, right? So I'm going to do winter. Maybe I don't do it first. Red teddy bear. Maybe I take off the red because that's a quantifier, right? I'm going to do teddy bear. I'm still scared. Winter. Oh, winter coat. I don't know what happened there. Teddy bear, winter. And then I go images. So I'm kind of like pretending I would be iterating here, right? Now all of a sudden I have a winter teddy bear, right?
Right.
So maybe I open this guy, which is a little bit different teddy bear. This is one of those sites that intercepts me from trying to view the image directly. And I close the window. So maybe I'll do this one, because he's red. And then I'm going to Okay, this time, well, we've got winter again, Christmas again, child, cute, we saw that one earlier, season, outdoors, gloves. So does it have gloves? Does he have gloves on? He does have gloves on. That's pretty cool. I actually figured out he had gloves on. I mean, it seems to me that what you could do here is sort of like, I mean, I suppose, if I search for a red teddy bear, maybe the indication that it's associated with Christmas might give us a direction to move in. So, I mean,
right.
You know, like, obviously, time of year is context, so you're probably going to be searching for Christmas as opposed to Valentine's Day right now, right? I don't know how many people buy red teddy bears for their significant others on Valentine's Day, but clearly some of these are consistent between the two. So I have a teddy bear with, you know, like winter clothes on, and a red teddy bear. They share a lot of the same context. You know, being for children, being in the winter, being cute, soft, fluffy, things like that. Funny, right? So if I were able to sort of crank on this a little bit, so here's how I sort of see this, you know, whole search visualization thing working, is that when I search, while I'm searching and while I'm not searching, it takes all of the stuff that sort of came back and then sort of sifts it. But it's doing it constantly, so it's like just sitting there visualizing on its own. And the way it's visualizing is, it's like, here's an image, look at the image, pull back the results, take out the results, do another search. See if you get the same results.
Okay.
Right? So it would be sort of, the behavior would be this circular behavior of like, okay, well, the human searched for a red teddy bear. I don't really know what the human's doing. That's really what the computer's emitting. Right now, the computer does no idea what the human's seeing.
Right.
Internally.
Right.
Internally, the human is seeing maybe the perfect red teddy bear, right? But in reality, what's happening is the human is seeing a teddy bear dressed up in winter clothes.
Right.
That it's going to buy for Christmas for the kids.
Yeah, like what if you're at I don't know, you're on ToysRUs.com and you went online and you started searching for a toy for your kids, but you know, like you're like, maybe you don't, maybe that store you saw it and you went to New York, you went to like the now defunct FAO Schwartz, and you remember it from your childhood, this perfect teddy bear, and you had it in a picture from Christmas when you were like,
and you're seeing that.
And you're like, you know what, I'm going to get my kid this picture, but where am I going to find it? Maybe I could throw this image into one of the search engines for some store or something like that. And maybe they could interpret that for me and say, oh yeah, we have something very similar to that. Or here's all the teddy bears that have a raincoat, a yellow raincoat and boots, or, you know, Paddington Bear.
Paddington Bear,
yeah. So yeah, we have something similar to that. It may not be exactly, or we have bears with the boots and the jacket, but maybe not the hat. And it sort of starts to interpret that, because you can send that image.
So the person's sort of, like you would assume a normal person, or like majority of people, let's put it that way, are going to likely recall the picture of Paddington Bear. Right. With the rain boots and the coat and the yellow hat, which I'm not seeing in my mind right now. I just have these facts. I have these facts about Paddington Bear. And when you were starting to describe Paddington with the yellow hat, the second you said yellow hat, Paddington Bear came to mind.
Right.
But not, when I say come to mind, the words Paddington Bear came to mind, as opposed to seeing the image, which somebody might have but not have Paddington Bear. Right. So now they need to purchase Paddington Bear, because that's what they want to do, but they need the computer to do that.
Right.
So then they plug in yellow hat, bear, and then they might get lucky finding a picture of Paddington Bear and find some cross-reference. But what you really want is to just tell the computer, buy the bear with the yellow hat and rain boots.
Right.
So then the computer's got to go off and figure out Paddington Bear from that context.
Right. It's like when
visualizing.
When I go to I would go to get my hair cut, and you for the first time you ever go to a barber. When I first moved here, I would describe to them what I wanted, but it was never what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I should have brought a picture so they could visualize, so they could see it, because I guess I wasn't. Maybe it was either a fault of my own, like I wasn't able to describe it well enough, or it's some disconnect between the two. But if you can bring a picture to it, then if you can bring that person to visualize it, there's no interpretation of what I want. This is what I want.
Yeah.
If you could bring that into the fact of search, then there's no interpretation of. Don't give me a teddy bear with no raincoat on it. This is what I'm looking for. Can you find that? Do you know what this? Do you even know what a raincoat is?
Right.
Do you even know what a hat is? Do you know what the? Do you know that this is a teddy bear?
Yeah.
How are you interpreting that?
Well, we would want. So I think that what you would want to do is probably search for yellow hat teddy bear, and then have it look at all the images that come back from that. And we're going to rely on Google for now for that to give us the images, because it has the most images. But then you can sort of then say, look at each of these images.
Start crunching them. So it's sort of a side process.
It's a side process.
Here's all the images that I got back. I need to crunch these to see if they even match what this person is looking at.
And then correlate the terms like we do with facets.
Yeah.
So you pull all the terms out, and lavender ends up falling down to the bottom. If you look at all purple bears, you're going to get lavender. If you start with a purple bear, you're not going to end up with just purple bears. You're going to end up with all sorts of bears, like cozy bears and therapy bears and winter bear and things like that. And eventually the presumption would be, if you look at all the bears, you're going to end up with a list of commonalities between all of those images that the computer thinks about and try to infer something from those, right?
Based on what you typed in for your search term.
Which could be something that's not anywhere close to what you end up with, because the context was forgotten by the human. Paddington, for example. You really want Paddington to sort of pop out.
Hopefully that's what you
and I think maybe that's a more obvious one, right? If you type in, yellow hat and bear, you're going to get Paddington bear.
Oh, well, what if you type in hat and bear? Then you would get Smokey the bear, you get Yogi the bear, you get Paddington the bear, all the other bears. But if you put yellow hat, then,
I'm not actually broadcasting this because so we're getting a bunch of bear hats for, let's see here, let me switch this over. There we go. So we get a bunch of bear hats. We're getting a bunch of hats. We got a trucker hat with bears on it. We've got. So I mean, if we were to run our pseudo algorithm here, we would run it across all of these images, right? And
what was the search term? Bear hat.
The search term was hat bear. So we're wanting Paddington, right? The desired outcome would be Paddington here, but I don't see Paddington at all, right? So I guess here the thing is it a hat or is it a bear, right? Would be the first question. What's interesting is Google sort of knows, because I said hat, it's prioritizing the hat first, right? So it's showing me all hats, not bears with hats, right? So I would presume that what we would want is for us to show a hat with a bear on it, and then it sort of, I guess tease apart the fact that here's a bear with a hat on it, and that's really what we want. So we want to focus on that one, right? So maybe you end up with this tree. I would presume a tree. You would end up with, first off, we didn't know what order, so we have a bunch of hats that look like bears, and then we have a bunch of bears wearing hats. Which would you like? Like, which one's closer? I mean, if we were visualizing, though, we would use all of the context that we have.
Yeah. I mean, that's what, like you said, as I was describing, but once I started hitting on key things, like we're talking about a teddy bear, but then I started talking about raincoat. That probably started getting your mind, narrowing it down. Yeah. Then once I put on yellow hat, then where did that come from? Well, you've obviously seen Paddington Bear in the past through.
And there you are.
And there
you are, right. And look, Paddington's actually, is that Paddington? Wearing a red hat, which would not be normal. But maybe he does wear a red hat.
Maybe he does.
I don't know. I just imagined he wore a yellow hat, but, and I say imagine, I just sort of recalled it that way. But clearly we're just sort of, zeroing in. There's Paddington right there. He has a yellow hat.
Yeah,
that's right. For sure, that's Paddington, right? So, I mean, the two simply being a term apart would be, we would need to find in here, we would need to find something that indicated to us that this was associated with raincoats.
Right.
Right? And in order to do that, we would have to have one of these terms bring back raincoat. And I don't know that would necessarily happen, right? So it almost feels like if the computer starts visualizing, it needs some feedback from the user.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So that they know, that it knows what it produced is valid or not.
Mm-hmm.
But when you run that through, I guess that's what the percentages would be on.
The weights, yeah.
The weights for that would be, like, if it fall, I guess you would just have to set like a threshold. Like if it falls below a certain threshold, then you know that is totally not what you're talking about.
Right.
And I guess sort of the first, I guess it would be a little liberal at the beginning, but as you start to hone in on things, you would narrow it down to a certain percentage.
Well, I suppose, one of the things that, if we were to look at the way neural networks work, is that, they sort of holistically integrate weights between the different nodes of the different layers of the networks, in a way such that you get these floating point weights between the nodes, but then they're inclusive of stuff. Whereas, so what we're getting here is some sort of weighted value out of the neural network. If we look at the way search works a very similar way. You get weights on the key terms based on the occurrences, how close they occur to each other. So we have a bunch of weighting algorithms inside search engines to do something a little bit similar. It's not the exact same concept, but so here I've plugged in that hat, the hat, and so what do we get back? We get back humor, cat, teeth, sketch,
cat in the hat,
isolated. Does it say cat in the hat?
Humor.
Oh yeah, cat in the hat. But
where did it get illustration?
Isolated.
No person again. It's not a person.
Mm-hmm. Mammal. Mm-hmm. Portrait. So not a lot. Again, this is a hat this is a bear hat.
Toy.
A hat that's a bear.
Wildlife.
Animal. So maybe you could. The trick is that I just keep thinking back to, if I'm searching for this Paddington concept as a human, I'm just going to hit the search engine. I'm going to pull up a bunch of images. I'm going to type in a bunch of random things, and I'm going to eventually get something. So we're kind of assuming that if we get search to visualize, that it just needs to be. I guess it has to rely on the human to continue interacting with it, right? So maybe the idea would be,
I think initially, for sure, until you could get enough momentum within that data set so it could start to interpret certain things.
Well, it's kind of interesting because, like, you start to see the sort of the breadth of the problem of AI in general, which is, if I have, a neural network is great if it's been trained on data, but then if I show it new data, the neural network's current state of the art is about 99 point and some change accuracy on untrained data. So if you've trained it on, and that's what I say current state of the art is processor power and the algorithms we have. Google just announced today that they were releasing some new stuff for image recognition. a new way of approaching these capsule networks. So the capsules are designed to do something like edge detection to detect it's a bear. The capsule would be in charge of it. In the network itself would be in charge of saying this is a bear, right? And then you have a traditional neural network framework wrapping the capsules. So I think that's where we're kind of getting at here is if we were searching for Paddington, and we could go off on a wild goose chase with the algorithm could go off and say, well, I don't even know if they want a hat that's a bear or a bear that's wearing a hat. So that would be one thing to determine is what are they talking about? Like, I mean, the human could be wanting a hat that's a bear. For their kid.
Like a bear hat.
Yeah. So in many cases, it's just really about who you are at that point. Right. So maybe it knows that you buy lots of hats, but then maybe it knows you have a nephew. But I mean, then that requires a lot of knowledge up front. But then again, like, would it just, could you actually have it just sitting there visualizing and showing the person the visualizations? That's what I'm thinking about. As like you have like this viewfinder of the mind of the AI, the search engine, showing you pictures of things that it's seeing as it's cranking. It's just sitting there burning CPU cycles, doing stuff, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's it, and you click on it, and then that's some sort of signal.
Like, is this what you mean?
Yeah.
That's what you mean?
No,
that's what I mean.
That's what I mean.
And then, okay, that is relevant. So next time someone searches for a teddy bear hat, then at least this would be a reference that I could go back to. Like, the last time someone searched for this, this is what they were talking about. So maybe I should start gearing my results set towards getting things that are more similar to this, as opposed to the other, whatever. They're looking for a teddy bear hat.
You know, it's funny.
Like that.
You say the whatever, but I had an associate a friend at Splunk, and he was working on some stuff, and one of the things he was working on was the whatever. And so he would actually run, and it was on images, and he would pull back images that didn't have, were somehow bizarrely associated, sort of like the lavender, so that the lavender ended up being the interesting thing. So he would identify that lavender was interesting because none of the other images of bears came back with lavender, so you paid attention to that, right?
Pay attention to the things that don't make
sense, but are interesting. So maybe that's the key here is like teasing out the interesting things. You know, cat is not interesting. I mean, cats are interesting, but cat and teeth are sort of common terms. If we were to look at the occurrences of cat and teeth across the internet, they're going to occur a lot, with very little context. But getting back lavender with a bear is something different. Okay? So maybe you pay attention to that, and then you visualize those things. Right? So if you were to search for lavender bear, you might get back, you might get back something interesting. Again, I'm afraid. That's fine. It's purple bears. It's okay. Look, lavender bears. Well, this makes sense because lavender is a color. So it's identifying that purple and lavender are sort of the same color, right? So maybe the commonality between those is stronger than we thought. We sort of
playing with fire.
Playing with fire. Alrighty. Well, that was interesting.
Why don't you put in red hot teddy bear and see what happens?
You can do that on the next episode of Lucidworks Live. Alrighty, I'm Cordless, and hopefully today's topic was a little interesting. So we really didn't do so much hacking today, but a little bit of hacking.
A little.
We were using an AI to like pull back images, image stuff. So
I did, just before we close out, I started fooling around with Tesseract. I think that's gonna be no. That's gonna be. I think if we're gonna continue on with this discussion for next time, I think I'm gonna fool around with this a little bit, and hopefully I can start playing around with that as well. Sort of how taking what we were talking about and sort of integrating some tools into Fusion itself.
Into Fusion for doing this stuff, right?
It'll be set. We'll take it. It'll be. I think it might end up being like a series or something that we could do to build on it.
Yeah.
I think that might be an interesting thing. And also maybe even doing a comparison between using Tesseract and using that API that you were using within Fusion to see who's bringing back the best sort of results.
So give me a little like summary of Tesseract.
So basically, Tesseract is a plugin that we can use for OCR within Tika. So as you throw in documents, sort of like PDF images and whatnot, it should be able to. I think Tesseract is it's open source, so it's limited. So from the discussions I've heard internally, it does text extraction from images as well, but sort of interpreting like a house or something like that, it may not do that well.
Right.
This the one that you were using looks like it does like actual image processing.
Yes.
Really
yeah.
well.
And it's a trained neural network, so they're constantly training.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, I like to use the open source stuff just because it's free.
Right. That's right.
But then I want to be able to sort of be able to tell clients that want to do this sort of thing, like this is what Tesseract does, but if you wanted to do more, then you may need to go down this line.
Yeah.
I want to see the thing work, and I want to see what it does, and just kind of fool around with it and see what more we could do with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where it brings us.
I mean, it's an interesting topic. I think we should keep working on it.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Well, awesome.
All right. Well, today's drink was Moscow Mule, by the way.
Moscow Mule. Cheers. All right, Michael.
Another episode.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. We appreciate everybody watching. We have 2 followers now.
Yes.
On this account, we have 1,500 on the other account. Eventually, we'll go full production with these.
And don't forget to like us and vote up.
That's right.
And that's it. See you next week. I love soul.